In the earlier installments around addiction, we've talked about the drivers that drive us to addictive and compulsive behaviors. Um, and one of the drivers we talked about last time is deficiency stories. It's really important to work with deficiency stories, not just because deficiency stories create a lot of suffering in our lives in many ways and in many relationships, but because also deficiency stories are often a driver towards addiction. Another important driver that drives people to addiction is shame. However, I'm not going to deal with that topic right now because it's its own topic. In other words, shame, like deficiency stories, drive us to a lot of different behaviors. And shame is such a big part of human life that it deserves its own conversation. So that's coming down the road. But just know that shame is one of the drivers of addiction. So when you get to that shame video that's coming down the line, just remember that you can use what I say about shame to inquire into shame, and that can have a positive impact on any compulsive or addictive behaviors you're experiencing. I'm also not, again, going to go into trauma in any more depth at this point. There may be other videos on trauma. Just remember that trauma is also a driver to addiction. So if you're working on trauma as a driver, go to those videos that I've talked about trauma to get some insight about how to work with that. So we've covered trauma. We've covered a little bit about deficiency stories. Both of those are drivers. We're going to talk later about shame as its own topic, but it is also a driver towards addiction. So you want to deal with these drivers to really get to the root of the pain that drives you to these things, right? Today I want to talk about a unique driver that people aren't often aware of. And that's, again, external pressure. Okay, at the Kilby Center we learned a valuable lesson. I happen to be trained not just as an addiction specialist, and I'll tell you right now, I'm a California addiction specialist, but I'm actually letting that title go because I don't actually like the way that they teach you about addiction in these universities. The ones that the program that I was involved with, very old model, still very focused on behavior. I feel like they haven't gotten the unconditional love piece yet in addiction schools. They certainly don't know how to do inquiry. They don't know what it is. It's too new to them. It comes from the East. A lot of the addiction schools are studying very Western modalities, some of which work, and we found that some of them don't. Many of them don't. So we've had to really rediscover and reinvent the way that we're working with addiction that is based in awakening and really deep trauma work. Instead of just focusing on behavior and how many days you have clean and all that stuff, which I feel is really superficial. Let me talk to you just a little bit about that before we get into this driver around external pressure. Dan McClintock, who's the co-developer of this work with me, was originally, this is all public knowledge, was originally a client at the Kilby Center. And like so many people, he was really forced into treatment at an early age by his parents. A lot of young people are forced into treatment because their parents are worried about them or their loved ones are worried about them. The problem with that is that when you pressure someone into treatment or pressure someone to change, it often backfires, right? Why does it backfire? It's as simple as this. Many of us, as part of the ego, have a defiant streak, right? If you tell me something if you tell me I shouldn't do something, or that I need to quit doing something, there can very easily be within me a defiance that comes up. And what does that defiance do? It says no. you can't tell me how to live my life. This is my life. And your pressure that you're putting on me is actually making it worse. Because your pressure is experienced as judgment, as sort of punishing, and shaming, really. So that's often how pressure is received when you're someone who's addicted and people are trying to help you. Excuse me, my hiccups here. You experience that as pressure. And so if you've ever been on the receiving end of pressure, it often backfires. It makes you want to do the opposite of what people are pressuring you not to do, right? So what we found is that the loved ones who were pressuring people into treatment at our center were actually making it worse in many cases. Because the people on the receiving end of that couldn't really determine what they wanted, because they were at the receiving end of so much pressure. So they were in treatment or getting recovery for other people. And that's not the most authentic way to recover, because if you do it for other people, it just may not last. Simply because you don't have the intrinsic motivation to get better or to clear the traumas or whatever that drive you to addiction. You're responding to the pressure from other people, right? And what we saw at the Killaby Center is when that pressure is happening towards our clients from family members or whoever else, the clients would often feel the pressure of that as trauma itself, and they would use because of the pressure. Almost like a defiant screw you. If you're going to do this to me, pressure, I'm going to do this, and I'm also going to do it in secret. I'm not going to tell you about it, because if I tell you about it, you're just going to judge and pressure me more. So it drives people into secrecy, lying, and hiding. And as a treatment center, we cannot help those people if they've had a history of lying and hiding to the pressurers in their life. So at the Killaby Center, we don't pressure at all. We don't pressure people to stay in treatment. We don't pressure people to do inquiry. We don't even pressure people to use or not use, because we know that pressure can backfire. It's a driver towards more addiction, towards more secrecy, more dishonesty. Instead, we love them unconditionally. Love them unconditionally, right? Without pressuring them. And what we do is we try to help them find out how this pressure that they've experienced from other people is actually making them more compulsive towards these addictive behaviors and driving them into secrecy. So how do we work with pressure? And here's how you can work with it in your life. You can start off by using shadow work, the 3-2-1 process. The 3-2-1 process was, we were given permission, we meaning the facilitators of this work, were given specific permission from Ken Wilber, who developed the 3-2-1 process, or the Integral Institute developed it. We really liked it. I went to Ken, we had a long conversation. He said, absolutely, Scott, bring this into your work. I like your work. Let's bring it in. It's been helpful ever since. And it's really helpful on what we call the external shadow. So I'll just take you through it myself. Let's say that I have a drinking problem, and I don't. Even though, just to clear the air so that people don't think, I used to drink alcohol every day back in my using days. I can't even stand it today. Every now and then I'll have a glass of wine, every once in the blue moon, but my body just doesn't want any more, right? But let's say that I'm in the situation where I'm drinking heavily and it's damaging my life. And then I have people around me who are getting nervous about that. They're scared. They're scared for my safety. I understand. It's love, but it's being infused with fear and anxiety, frustration and anger that I'm receiving from other people. Scott, you must change. You have to quit. You gotta quit. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep drinking. You gotta get help. Well, if it were that easy, I would have already gotten help, right? And so that pressure is felt like, you don't love me, you don't accept me the way I am, there's no unconditional love here, you're anxious, you, the pressure, are anxious and you're not dealing with your issue, your anxiety, your feeling of helplessness, your frustration, your anger, and you're putting that on me. And that's not helping. So with shadow work, we can relieve that external pressure that we experience from other people. And then we can own our own internal pressure, because we often pressure ourselves to quit, right? And then as we relieve that internal and external pressure, a newfound freedom is there, where we have the choice to decide what it is that we want. Instead of responding to the pressure from other people, we can decide, well, what is it that I want, right? Once we let go of that pressure shadow. And then deciding what we want, then we can make an honest choice. Do I want to do this deep work that it takes to recover? Or do I want to go out and just drink alcohol? And either one is fine, because that's what's going to happen. If I want recovery for myself, if I want freedom, I'm going to find that. I got to find that within myself, though. I can't find it just because other people want me to find it. It's not genuine, right? Or if I'm not ready, through the pressure work that we're going to do, I may find out that I want to keep drinking. I'm just not ready to stop. And that's honest. And maybe I have to go out and drink alcohol for 3 more years or how many to get to the place where I'm suffering enough to do something about it, right? But the key is let's work with the external pressure shadow so we can get to this question of what we really want. Here's how the 3-2-1 process works. So I've got a drinking problem, theoretically here. Don't have one. And I'm feeling pressure from like family members and close friends, maybe a partner. They're all trying to get me to get help, trying to get me, even to force me into treatment. Maybe they're even doing an intervention on me, and I'm feeling all that pressure, right? And what it wants me to do is just to say, back off, because you're making it worse. You're making me feel bad about myself. You're shaming me, and that just makes me want to drink more, right? So to start the 3-2-1 shadow process, I just simply imagine this trait of pressure as it shows up in various people in my life, and I start dialoguing with it. The first thing I do is I've spotted the shadow. The shadow is this pressure coming from the outside, right? Now what you'll find out through the process is that's really internal pressure. We pressure ourselves to quit drinking, but we don't own that pressure completely, and so we shadow it out onto other people, and we get really bothered when other people are pressuring us. It's our own shadow. We're boxing our own shadow. See that? So once I've spotted the shadow of pressure, I start dialoguing with it. And I say, here's why I don't like pressure. You are arrogant. You don't know what's best for me. Your pressure is making it worse. It's annoying. It makes me angry. It makes me want to use behind your back so I don't have to listen to you anymore. It makes me not want to open up to you and tell you what's really going on, because I don't want to hear your reactivity and your anxiousness and your anger. It's not helping. Stop doing it. Stop doing it, because when you do it, it makes me feel bad about myself. I feel deficient. I feel shamed. And the best way for me to deal with that is to use more. So stop. Stop with your pressuring. I'm tired of it. Stop it now. And we do that in a safe environment. We're not necessarily doing it to the people, saying it to the people in real time. We're saying it to these people as we imagine them in our awareness, or to that trait of pressure as we imagine in our awareness. We keep dialoguing with it until we get everything out, everything that we feel about what we don't like about that pressure, how it makes us feel. So I go through that whole process of dialoguing in that way. And then when that dialoguing is complete, I re-own the pressure shadow. And I say, I'm pressuring myself to not drink, right? And then that pops up the preoccupation right there, right? Because now I've owned the pressure on my side. I'm judging myself. I'm pressuring myself to drink, to not drink, right? And again, that's the the aversion, that's the preoccupation. It's not just that I want to drink, but I'm pressuring myself not to. You see that? The flip side of the two. Watch my video on preoccupation. There's two sides of preoccupation. It's the wanting to drink and the pressure that I place on myself or from others not to drink. All of that amps up preoccupation around alcohol because I'm thinking about it too much. I'm fixated on drinking or not drinking, right? And in that's an internal struggle, a duality. I'm at war with myself around this, right? So as I re-own that, I say, I'm pressuring myself. How am I pressuring myself? I give examples. Well, I'm pressuring myself because I'll go all day pressuring myself not to drink at night. And then I find myself at the liquor store and I drink. I buy my 12-pack. I drink a few beers and I pressure myself not to drink more. Trying to quit. Again, being preoccupied with that. Or preoccupied with the craving of drinking, right? So here with the shadow process, I'm just naming the ways in which I'm pressuring myself or judging myself. Owning that, saying it out loud and feeling what that feels like to be pressuring myself constantly. And once I fully re-own that, it feels like the pressuring is coming from my own side more instead of externally from other people, right? Owning that within ourselves, knowing that we're doing this to ourselves, and that's part of the preoccupation, right? Now, once I've re-owned it, I don't have to make it about other people pressuring me. I can see I'm doing it to myself. And that's when I can go into inquiry, moving from shadow work into inquiry from there, right? Once I've re-owned this thing about me pressuring myself. So what's a good inquiry to start with right there is this reverse inquiry. I rest as awareness and I say, I don't have to pressure myself. And then what comes up is, yes, you do. Because if you don't, you'll keep drinking. You'll be out of control. You have to manage. You have to self-will yourself. You have to stop. Stop drinking, Scott. Stop drinking. When all that stuff comes up in awareness for me to see, those words, those pictures, those feelings and sensations around pressuring myself. But now I'm in inquiry. And I can just watch these thoughts. Right? Again, just tier one watching, where you're just allowing each of these thoughts to be slowed down and seen and fall away until all those thoughts eventually fall away from just witnessing. Sometimes you have to tap or use focus shifting or something to unhook if the thoughts are sticky, but eventually the thoughts just naturally fall away from either a tier one or tier two way of being with them. And as they do, again, it coming into the body, right? Because pressure is felt in the body. It's all Velcro. Coming down and feeling the sensation or the emotion that's connected to that pressuring. But now I don't have those thoughts there to get in the way of that. And I rest with that feeling or sensation. Might do some mining, if something is stuck down there, ask a question to see what story is connected to it. Might do that. Might just rest with the sensation itself. Like if there's a shape to it somewhere in the body, I can use those metaphysical hands and just gently let the hands dance with that sensation. Noticing the space within and as the sensation and just allowing it. If there's no form or shape there in the body that I can use those imaginary hands with, I just feel into it from awareness and let my attention just move with that sensation, whatever it wants to do, giving it the space to do whatever it wants to do, just loving it. Maybe I say the thank you phrase, like, thank you to the sensation. I'm glad you're here. You're welcome to stay. All these little tools help us unhook from being identified with this sensation in the body so that it can begin to fall away or diminish. As it falls away or diminishes, then some of the thoughts around this pressure story can start to get quiet. But I have to be thorough with it and come back to the reverse inquiry to see what's left. And so I say again, after all that clears, I say again, I don't need to pressure myself. And then maybe a new set of thoughts come up that say, yes, you do. Maybe some different words, some pictures, some memories, some future thoughts. And again, I just rest with those. Let those be seen. Notice the space around the thoughts. Rest with them. And let's just say this time it's just too overwhelming. There's a bunch of thoughts there, and as I rest with those, I'm too identified with them. I can't move through them. And so maybe I see all those as a collage right there, and I just do a little focus shifting plus tracking. So as I see those words that are very sticky, those pictures, I just start that process of moving my fingers back and forth, watching them, right? And then switching to a surface. That's the focus shifting, switching to a surface in the room somewhere, just watching that surface from presence. And then coming back to watching the fingers again. Can even isolate one eyeball, follow that finger with just that one eyeball. This sort of discombobulates the story, or makes you discombobulated and helps you unhook from those words a little bit more. Again, coming back to a surface for a moment. Just being even aware of the entire surfaces of the present moment, or the space in the present moment. Anything that takes you out of that thought stream for a second. And then coming back again to watching. Remember, there's 3 rounds of it, right? Just watching that, and then coming for a last time to just notice the surface of the screen here, right? Just being present to that, or to a wall or something. At that point, those sticky thoughts have unhooked from me somewhat. They're very far in the distance, or they're gone. And again, I can come then down into the somatic experience and be with what I'm feeling with there skillfully, using mining, metaphysical hands, the now method, the dance, the thank you phrase, or just generally resting with the feeling or sensation directly, feeling it from presence, without those thoughts on it right there, see? So as I keep working with this external pressure inquiry, the pressure that I'm putting on myself starts to relax. See, because through the shadow work, the pressure that other people were experiencing or putting on me, that started to relax through shadow work. Then I owned that pressure on my own side, and I inquired into that, so that the pressure here on my own side starts to diminish and fall away. And then when that falls away, there's, again, a newfound freedom in my relationship to the alcohol. Because I'm not pressuring myself anymore. And so that pressure is no longer a driver to more alcohol or to more secrecy, because the pressure is empty after I've looked at it. It's just not there. So you just keep repeating that. Anytime you feel external pressure, do the shadow work followed by this inquiry, and see that over time that pressure, both internal and external, begins to just fall away and not be there anymore. And that's a different kind of recovery. It's not about forcefully trying to get myself or pressuring myself to stop. And it's not about being on the receiving end of this traumatic response from other people who are nervous about my drinking. That relaxes too. And then I have the clarity to find out what it is that I really want now after I've done this inquiry. And chances are you're not going to have a strong pull towards the alcohol at that point, right? That's choice. That's freedom. More to come on addiction.